I'd like to introduce you to the Macro Journal. This is a tool for tracking the economy. So think about being on a job interview and think about the question that you might get. Hey, what's going on with the economy? What's your opinion in the economy? What do you think about the economy? Now, for some of you there, maybe this is a young professional, maybe this is an undergraduate or master's student. You might be thinking, well, I'm not an economist. I'm not going to get that question. Look, if you have any type of undergraduate training on your resume, if you have some type of business training on your resume, you're likely going to get this type of question formally, informally. The way that you answer the question says a lot about who you are, your training, your thought process. Are you a thinker? And I don't want you just to say, "Oh, it's good," or "Oh, it's okay." That's not sufficient. I want you to be able to do better. I want you to be able to take this really seemingly simplistic but actually difficult question and be able to give a cogent answer. Your own opinion, not like the answer. There's no right answer. Your own opinion. And the secret's going to be breaking it up into small chunks, different aspects of the economy. But how do you do that? That's where this journal comes in. So I want to walk you through that. The economy is huge. The US economy is multi-trillions of dollars. How do you get your arms around multiple trillions of dollars? You have to not only monitor it and interpret it and then assess it, and then you have to convey your opinion on it. How do you do that? It's got to be complete. It's got to be concise. Again, think like you're on a job interview or you're talking to a potential client, let's say. You have to be able to give them that information. Maybe you just get that 1 second elevator pitch. Oh yeah, I think it's good because the Fed's cutting rates or whatever it is. And then they follow up, oh, well, tell me more. It's got to be complete and concise. This is not easy for lots of reasons, one of which is that all macro data is wrong to one degree or another. I mean, the data gets revised, but then even when you get the quote unquote final data, it's still just a proxy of the truth. It's not a market transaction. It's trying to actually summarize a whole bunch of different market transactions with sampling. We know there's always sampling errors also. It's not like I can look on my Bloomberg or FactSet or Icon screen and see the ticker for GDP or see the ticker for the unemployment rate. This stuff does not happen in real time. What we see is observed with lags. Sometimes, 3, 4 weeks, sometimes 3, 4 months or years. So it could be October 23rd, and I'm getting information about September. So I don't see this stuff in real time. For these reasons and myriad others, tracking the economy, answering that question is not easy. So recommendations for you to get your arms around this. Firstly, I want you to think about a particular frequency. I want you to think about weekly. I want you to give yourself a task. Right? There's a set deliverable. I want you to think on the margin. So by which I mean, there's a few ways to go about this. You could say, oh, the economy's good. It's going to grow at a particular number, 2.5% or whatever it is. Or I'm going to use a Likert scale of +2 to -2. And that's our absolute basis. That's great. And when I help to train more professional economists, business economists, we often use that. But for our purpose here, just getting started, casual observer, quick summary user, the marginal comparison is going to be much more effective, cost being your time, and effective for whatever you're doing with it. Is it better than last week? I don't know about the absolute value. That's hard to assess, but is it better on the margin? Really enforce that. And then I want you to take hold of the fact that we don't know the truth, which means we need to act like detectives. I want you to compile different articles, different news stories, different tweets, different podcasts, and put them together. Act like a detective to tell a story. Next, I want you to observe actively. I don't want you to read the news. I want you to live and breathe with the news. I want you to engage with the news. So I just don't want you to put on Bloomberg TV or read the New York Times and just let that fall over you. And at the end of the week, just say, yeah, I think it's going up or I think it's going down. That's not going to be sufficient. Keep notes. Keep a notebook. I could talk to you in another video about how I actually track and compartmentalize everything, but I use a notebook, and then every time I read a news story, looking through the lens of, let's say, the MacroJournal. I'm looking through the way in which we're organizing it, the way in which I'm reading every article is going to be tracked and summarized inside of this structure. So observe the news actively. And then what I want you to do is make it feasible. Set a goal that's feasible for you. We're not professional macroeconomists here. Again, we have other tools to be able to accomplish that goal. For us, we just need to come up with a simple heuristic of, is it getting better or worse? I want you to evaluate economic conditions in a simple manner and in something that's consistent. Don't change it week to week. It's hard to then track if you are getting better at doing this and if the economy is getting better. So consistency, simplicity, my recommendation, very simple metric, traffic light, red light, yellow light, green light. Deteriorated, remain the same, or improved. Game of Thrones style. That's all it is. Now, you could think about something that's very rigorous, right? Where we're making a numerical forecast or something that's a little bit more rigorous, on a Likert scale, like I mentioned before. Laudable, not our purpose. This coarse rubric of just thumbs up, middle, or down helps us make this an achievable goal. Next, what I want you to do is not just score it, I want you to own it. The way you own it is you got to write. Writing is the best way to crystallize your thinking. Explain how each news story connects to the economy. Now, how you do that? Couple of tips. First off is I want you to align release dates, not activity dates. Pieces of jargon, let me explain. So let's say today is, again, 23rd of October. What you're doing is you are looking at an economic calendar and you see on the news that some data came out today on October 23rd, but it was for activity that occurred in September, a month ago. So do I wait until I get all of the data for the month of September in that quarter, calendar quarter, and then I go back and evaluate? By that time, that job interview you were on, you've lost the job. Right. So if you like thinking visually, imagine you're looking at an economic calendar, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and there's all sorts of information that's released. Some of it about September 1 month ago, some of it about the summer a few months ago, some of it about a couple of years ago. Should I ignore it because it's about last month or last quarter? No, it's new information. It's old activity, but it's new to you, which means that it influences your thumbs up, middle, or down. Now, of course, you could get a little bit more sophisticated and think about how you weight these things. Maybe if it's about activity that occurred long ago, you could down weight it. But still, it's new information. Align release dates, not activity dates. I want you to think on the margin. Activity came out for the month of September, 0.3%. The month prior was at 0%. All right, so it improved. And again, we're all about that delta, that marginal rate of change. Not just about where it was, but where we expected it to be. I want you to think about expectations. Came out at 0.3 and analysts were only thinking 0.2. Okay, so better than expectations. Might mean that there's something else going on in this system that we haven't quite captured yet, some type of idiosyncratic exogenous shock that I need to further analyze. Where this becomes difficult is when you have things that are conflicting. Maybe a report came out that was 0.3% growth. Sounds good. Okay. Well, last month the last reading of it was zero. So it went from 0 to 0.3. I'm thinking on the margins. That's positive. Great. But analysts were thinking it was going to be 0.4. So it disappointed in that way. Do I set my rating based upon relative to analysts' expectations, or do I set my rating based upon thinking on the margin? This is subjective. If we wanted to create a concrete rule, then we would come up with a numerical forecast, but that would be for a different purpose, a different audience. I want you not to be wedded to quote unquote data. I want you to think about qualitative as well as quantitative information. Did the Fed meet? Did the Treasury Secretary speak? Was there a geopolitical event? All of these influence economic activity in some way. All right, so it's still multiple trillions of dollars of activity. How do I compartmentalize it? Three categories: output, prices, labor. I did not make that up. That's the way the Federal Reserve talks to Congress when they give their testimony. It used to be called Humphrey Hawkins. And they summarize activity of the economy, multiple trillions of dollars in those three buckets. So go back to that job interview when they ask you, hey, how's the economy doing? You say, oh, good, versus, oh, well, I think output is actually rising faster than I expected. Prices are still a little bit higher than I would like, and the labor market's strong. Much more rigorous color to your opinion. So output, how do I track output? Well, we don't know the truth, but we do have a proxy. The primary proxy is going to be gross domestic product. It's released quarterly with monthly revisions, quarter of quarter percent delta SAAR. That's the typical way that it's cited. If it goes up, thumbs up. It's just a proxy, of course. Now, what I recommend is to make sure that you break it up. It's huge. So break it up. How do you break it up? C, consumer. I, investing. G, government spending. And X, net exports. And there will be bits of information about each of these throughout every week. Little breadcrumbs, okay? Little pieces of detective work that you can do each week, pieces of evidence. I give some examples. You can take a look at the slide deck later based upon the data and what I'm looking at and how you could form your opinion. So that's one of the three. The second of the three is the labor market. Again, we don't know the truth, but we do have a proxy. Unemployment rate, UR, that's a monthly variable, percent of the labor force that's unemployed. Negative relationship, UR goes up, my thumb goes down. All right. Like all macro data, it's not the truth. Lots of other things that can go into your weekly detective work, labor force participation, weekly jobless claims, and the like. To give you an example, you can take a look at the slides a little bit later. How would you look at some of this data and translate that into a vote? Out of the three, this is the last. Prices, we don't know the truth. We got a proxy, CPI, monthly, year-over-year percent delta. This one's tricky. The others, right, it was kind of absolute direction, GDP being the simplest. If GDP goes up, my thumb goes up. If prices go up, is that approved? Higher price is good for some people, bad for others. So, okay, so then prices go down. If prices go down, that's good. It's good for some, it's bad for others. The idea is price stability. And the conventional colloquial amount of stability is 2% year-over-year growth. There's a whole history as to why that's the number, but one of the reasons why I like to use it is because it's seen as the target for the Federal Reserve, not necessarily the CPI, but that rate of 2%. I don't want you to be wedded to two exactly. No, it's a fuzzy boundary and range. And again, there's lots of different indicators, but the context here is what's going to matter. So pretend you're in the post-Great Recession period. We're thinking 2012, 2013, and prices are really low. We're afraid of deflation. Every time we see something indicating that there's an increase in prices, that's green light. We're improving. Why is that? Because we're getting closer to the zone of price stability. Meanwhile, if we were back in the post-COVID period and we saw prices rising, that's bad. It could be the same report. Oh, prices were up 0.2% month over month, but where we are matters. Context matters. So the key is going to be getting closer and closer to the zone of price stability. And I give examples of that just like before, where you could translate the data into a rating. Couple of pitfalls to watch out for. Don't try to include everything. Even if you're a professional macroeconomist, which I've worked with many before, you can't keep an eye on everything. The key for us is going to be to create an internally consistent argument. I want you to be, again, just as a story on that job interview, and be able to back up your opinion. Even if it's on one data item, should be more, but even if it's just on one, if you can understand why that data item impacts the economy and how it influences your opinion, that's much more rigorous than trying to watch everything and not really forming any rigorous opinion. Don't fall into the trap of forecasting. Forecasting is hard enough when you have an econometric model or something like that. We're not going there. And tracking the economy is hard enough, let alone forecasting it without an econometric model. Where are we now? Nowcasting. Okay. Again, this is not like looking at the Bloomberg screen and tracking the price of gold and saying, is gold, $262 an ounce now or not, right? We don't observe that in real time. We don't observe activity. We don't observe prices. We don't observe labor market and aggregates. So I don't want you to forecast. That's too difficult. That's beyond our purview. I want you to think about where we are now. There is no right answer to this. It's your own opinion. Even if it's for a grade in a class, let's say, it's more about your logic than your opinion. Lots of resources are available. One of the key ones is going to be the economic calendars. There's several out there. I like trading economics, but many that you can use. So just to summarize, each week I want you to read the news. I want you to keep track of the news and your thoughts and read every news story through the lens of, is it impacting overall economic activity, labor market, or prices? Then at the end of the week, compartmentalize all of that information. Concatenate all of that information, bring it all together and come up with an opinion. Based upon the data and news stories released the past week, has your opinion of output improved, deteriorated, or remained the same? Do the same for labor. Do the same for prices. Good luck.